This podcast is brought to you by Monkey Nut Audiobooks
Creating audiobooks, podcasts, and voiceovers
that keep people listening.
Hi guys, this is the Reality of Christianity podcast. I am Chrissy and I am your host. Today we will be talking about the subject of depression. And so on the Reality of Christianity podcast, we mainly talk about various topics around faith and Christianity. And we talk about what it really means to walk the Christian walk every day and how real that is for a Christian. The real challenges, the real ups and the real downs. And we inspire people to hold on to God through the ups and downs. And today, as a guest, I have got Josh, who is a medical student. We will be talking about depression and his experience with depression. We will be looking at it from, of course, a Christian perspective, an everyday general perspective, a medical perspective as well. So we're kind of just touching base on a little bit of each. So, hi, Josh.
Hi,
It's good to have you on today.
thanks.
How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm all right. A little bit nervous.
No, yeah, it's normal. So you're here to talk about depression.
Mhm.
And this is something that obviously a lot of the nation does deal with, regardless of if they have a faith, if they don't.
Mm.
And we are going to try and do this subject today to try and help people, aren't we?
Yeah.
What has been your experience with depression? Is that something you've gone through before?
Yeah, so it started, I started feeling off about when I was about 15 years old, so about
Hmm
6 years ago or so. And it's something you don't notice it at first. You just think you have, like, I don't know, it's just one of those days, one of those weeks, you don't feel great. Um, yeah, but it then it kind of carries on. So one time, when it first started, it used to, for me anyway, it was just an evening where I felt quite down, and
hmm
then the next morning I'd be fine. And then that evening, one time it didn't stop the next morning, but after a couple of days it was fine. And then it was very I think it's probably the same for quite a few people. It's very progressive. You don't notice it,
hmm
and there gets to a point when actually it doesn't necessarily completely go away.
hmm
And yeah, you still have highs, you have lows, but they're kind of still quite down.
hmm
Um, yeah, I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety when I came to uni, in my second term.
hmm
And it kind of, up until then, I had been telling myself, no, it's just normal. This is normal. It's not. It's something everyone has. So actually getting that diagnosis for me was a relief, because
hmm
it's like, actually, this isn't normal. I can get help. I can I can get better.
hmm
Um, yeah, it then got worse actually after the diagnosis. Um, I don't know if that's normal or not. That was my experience
After you started taking medication or before?
before.
hmm
Um, my first appointment was, I said I didn't want medication. I went back a few weeks later saying, actually, I need medication.
Why did you turn down the medication the first time?
I didn't think it was bad enough.
hmm
Um, I didn't, I think it was quite new. I didn't necessarily expect the diagnosis almost.
What
Ev-
did you go there for?
It was a couple of weeks before I made the appointment. I was sitting in church, and the sermon was about how the Bible addresses our relationships with different things. So he made the point that it talks about the relationship between us and each other, us and God, us and nature, and then us and ourselves. And that's where I
hmm
felt like almost God poking me, being like, you should, this bit is addressing you.
hmm
Your relationship with yourself is not very good. In a So it made me go, I mean, I knew my relationship with myself wasn't good. It was that kind of prod of, I need to do something about it.
So how, when you said you woke up one day, you were feeling off.
Mm.
What did that feel like? What does that mean to feel off? Like, just because a lot of it does go undiagnosed, how did you feel from day to day feeling off? What is this off?
That's a really good question, and it's really difficult to describe.
Mm-hmm. Describe it in your own
It's
words.
generally feeling down. Generally, it often there's a struggle with motivation. I've
Mm-hmm.
That's something that's really impacted me.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of,
Lack
uh,
of motivation.
yeah, and just almost sometimes I lack like an apathy, a lack of. I don't. Not that I don't. I mean, I do care about things,
Of
obviously,
course, yeah.
but I guess sometimes in the moment when you're feeling really down, I guess you just want to give up. And I mean, not necessarily kind of to the extreme, but just, you just want to curl up in a ball and just let the day kind of carry on and just not with you, kind of, you just hide away. And
Mm-hmm.
it's that, yeah, isolation,
Mm-hmm.
wanting to, I mean, I'm an introvert naturally anyway, so
Yeah.
I like being alone, but there's a difference between being alone because I want to, and that's how I recharge, and actually just wanting to hide away from people because I want to separate myself.
I think there's a huge difference because,
Mm,
like, I used to be a real introvert. I'm not anymore. I don't know, have a balance, but I used to love spending time alone.
mm,
I used to be at home, but I still used to be really joyful. I was like, I love it. I'm on my own. I'm thriving.
mm,
I'm living my best life. I was there reading books and watching films, and I was still really happy. But that's totally different from wanting to be alone. Deep down, you want to go out, but you feel like you can't
mm,
because you're feeling so low. uh, you lose interest in the things you used to like, and then it just kind of feels like it just keeps you entrapped in a way,
yeah.
doesn't it? And then so you went back to the doctor, you got medication. How did that impact your depression then?
So it's been a little bit of a kind of experiment almost with the
Mhm.
medication.
Mhm.
So I went on kind of, it's it's called the first line treatment. It's
Mhm.
the kind of first drug they start you on, and it was okay. For a little bit, I felt my mood improve.
Mhm.
Um, Often, I mean, the way I kind of almost measure it for myself is how much, well, how often I get like really low thoughts and that kind of spiral.
Mhm.
And so I felt that improve a little bit. Um, but then I still struggled with motivation, especially getting out of bed. That's how I measure my motivation, is how
Mhm.
easy I find it to get out of bed.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, that wasn't improving. I was still struggling. We increased the dose, and yeah, it was kind of cycle of increase the dose, leave it. I mean, it takes time for the medication to work. They often say at least 6 weeks or so.
Mhm.
And in the meantime, you get side effects. You get, um,
What other side effects?
they're so wide ranging. The ones I had were lightheadedness, sometimes
Mhm.
dizziness,
Mhm.
and a little bit of a tremor.
Okay.
Um, I mean, it didn't really impact me. Oh, I increased it again at one point, and I found that I was working at McDonald's at the time over the summer, and I really struggled just like putting the toppings on the burgers in the kitchen,
Mhm.
especially with the cheese, like kind of peeling the cheese away because they were
Mhm.
stacked, and I found that really difficult because of I had this slight tremor. Um, so I went back and said, "This isn't working. Can we reduce the dose again so that
So
I
you have to
can?"
keep adjusting it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, eventually I went, you know what? I don't think it's not doing what I want it to.
Mhm.
I'm still feeling this lack of motivation. I don't. I thought that my mood
Mhm.
kind of had gone back to normal. I don't know if it's stayed how it improved in the first time, but I just got used to it and it still wasn't great. But yeah, so I spoke to them and we changed it to a different medication which targets more more of the chemical imbalance. And so
Mhm.
I found that a lot more helpful. And yeah, I
Good.
think I'm happy with the medication I'm on at the moment. Um,
Okay. But it
yeah.
wasn't like an instant
No,
solution or.
no, it's taken me. It probably took me over a year,
Mhm.
or maybe about a year to kind of get my medication to the place where I'm happy with it now. Um, yeah, I mean the medication that I'm on currently, they gave me the lowest dose that would work, and then I went back to them and asked for it to be increased again. So it is that kind of there's no there's no one treatment. It's not like an infection or something. They just
Yeah.
give you like antibiotics or something, and
Mhm.
then that's it. You're done. It's constantly trying and retrying different things, and what works for one person won't be the same as what works for another person. Um,
It takes such a huge amount of perseverance, strength, willpower to persevere through depression because, it doesn't sound nice,
mm,
obviously. But for people to carry on like that day after day after day, and then even with the lack of motivation to keep reaching out to doctors, to keep adjusting their meds, it's a process where you've got to be so patient. And now, because obviously it's quite a taboo subject in Christianity, a lot of stigma with it, just like other things, um, like sex or abortion and other subjects like that. How did it impact your relationship with God going through depression?
it was interesting. I've There have been moments where I've had to very much cling to God.
How did you
Um,
do that? How did you cling to God?
um, Prayer,
Mm-hmm.
especially. Just going, I can't do this on my own, and just coming to God in prayer and saying, I need help.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have been, over the last few years, I have been taught by almost experience um, that I'm not very good at reaching out to other people for help. And it's a process of actually realizing that I have to do that and I can't just rely on my own strength.
Mm-hmm.
And God has provided me with many people who I can reach out to. I think after the diagnosis, one of the first I first reached out to my student pastor at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and that was really good because he kind of came alongside me. He prayed for me. Yeah, so he treated it very much as, this is another illness kind of thing. This is something that you're struggling with, but it's not. I mean, one of the things he said before is that there should not be any taboo subject in church.
There shouldn't be,
It's
but
all
there
important.
is. Yeah.
There is, yeah.
People get ashamed because of
Mm,
it. They are in denial because of it. Because, like, when you have a sickness, sometimes you can keep putting it off and putting it off, thinking, I'm healthy. I've always been healthy.
mm,
It's admitting that you've got an illness, mental, emotional, physical, is hard, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, it
And then
is.
exposing that and sharing it with someone else, you've got to be vulnerable to do that. And also someone who might not have gone through it themselves, and there's all that. And then the way church deal with it isn't always the best,
Mm.
I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah. I mean, he really helped because
Mhm.
kind of in saying that there should not be any taboo subject, it kind of he suddenly becomes that
Open.
much more open,
Yeah.
and yeah, um, yeah. I think I haven't actually had a negative experience with someone directly.
Mhm.
Um, Having said that, I haven't. I have become more open about it because I do think it's important, and
Mhm.
um,
More open with who?
just in general,
Mhm.
I mean, I don't want to be the person who walks into a room, "Hey guys, I've got depression and anxiety. What are
Of
you going to
course
do
not.
about it?" But it's that kind of thing, I mean, the fact that I'm on meds sometimes means, I mean, the meds I'm on means I can't drink.
Mhm.
And that is something, if someone asks, "Oh, why can't you drink?" "Oh, because of my medication. And, I'm quite open about that. And
How do people react to it?
yeah, normally it's fine. I haven't had
Hmm.
as I said, I haven't had a problem with it. But I know it's, well, I haven't had a problem with it in person,
Hmm.
but you kind of see things online
Hmm.
and how some people deal with it online. And it does kind of, I guess, I mean, the problem is a problem with online, like social media, and that you see it on social media, and it kind of sometimes it makes you think everyone thinks that. Well, it might just be like the two or three people who are just posting about it every day or whatever.
Hmm.
But it doesn't give you a sense of the number of people who might actually think that.
Yeah.
So it is, yeah, it is kind of balancing that almost.
I think so much of the nations suffer with it,
Mm,
but they just don't like to say that they suffer with it. Or, like I
yeah.
say, they don't like to admit to it, or they
Mm.
don't even know that they've got depression to some extent. So, were there times when you've become frustrated with God because of it? And tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the frustrations, so I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, and they've kind
Yeah,
of gone, I think of them as like evil twins because they just bounce off of each other.
they work together so
Yeah,
much, don't they?
yeah, and so that's had a real impact on me socially. I really struggle making friends.
Hmm.
I struggle feeling part of a group, um, and that has been really frustrating when I've kind of been to God. I want a group of close friends, and I feel like I haven't been able to do that because of my mental health, and oftentimes that has led to me kind of beating myself up about it.
Of course, we do that, don't
Hmm.
we?
Yeah, but then
That makes it worse,
it
actually.
does,
Yeah.
it does. Yeah, it doesn't help it knowing that I'm going to go away from a social interaction. I'm probably going to keep beating myself up about something I did about it. It just ruins the whole interaction.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it has kind of gone from that to being annoyed at God because I feel like he could do this or he could do that and
Hmm.
he's not. And
He could heal me.
yeah, it's all of those things. And
How do you let out your frustration with God? How do you deal with that? How do you still hold on to Him through that?
I mean, I have before just ranted to him in prayer and just, yeah, I mean, I don't normally speak verbally because I don't want people like the other people in my house to hear me, but like in that silence, kind of just shouting and saying, "Why haven't you done this? Why is this? Why is my life like this?" Kind of
Hmm.
thing. Um, and yeah, I have often felt a sense of peace through that. Um, I don't I don't think there. I mean, I believe that God created us with emotions.
Hmm.
For whatever reason, he decided that it would be good for that.
To
Uh,
express emotion,
Mm,
yeah.
yeah. And therefore, you know, the fact that I feel emotions, I should and definitely can express that to God.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I mean, why do I cling to Him? It's something I have thought about because I have thought, like, that there are many non-Christians who would say, "Well, why don't you just leave?"
Hmm.
And it goes back. There's a really good kind of passage in the Bible. It's John 6, and it's kind of from verse 60 to the end of the chapter. And Jesus has just kind of preached and kind of given some teaching, and a load of people have gone, "This teaching's really difficult. I'm just going to go," and kind of walked away from him, stopped following him. And Jesus turned to his disciples, the 12 disciples, and said, "What about you guys? You going to leave as well?" And Peter kind of stood up and said, "Where else would we go? You hold the words to eternal life." And it's that idea of, I mean, I don't have like, no one's twisted my arm or anything. I am Christian because it's what I believe. I follow God because it's what I want to do. I love God. I want to follow him because I think that's the best way to lead my life. Um, and in doing so, I have. I mean, at uni, you're exposed to a lot of different people's lifestyles and experiences,
Yeah.
and I've seen that, and it doesn't gain them anything. It doesn't help with their mental health or anything.
Hmm.
And you see that, and there is nothing. There is nowhere else I can go. I can't rely on myself because, I mean, it's to do with me. I keep beating myself up every now and again. how can you rely on someone like that?
Mm-hmm.
I can't rely on other people because, I mean, there are some people who are great, don't get me wrong, and they've been a great help, but we're all human. We all
Yeah.
do wrong to each other.
We're all great to some extent, but then,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. And so to then rely wholeheartedly on someone or a group of people, it's opening yourself up to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. And I mean, sometimes it's not that they do anything wrong,
Yeah.
it's just there's miscommunication, or you wanted them to do something, but you didn't fully communicate with that
And then
them.
you can
And
become codependent on people as well
yeah,
when you're feeling vulnerable. For sure, that can
yeah.
happen, and then you're more likely to overreact when they let you down because you're now dependent on them for certain things. I get that,
Mm,
and I just think from also a medical perspective, because you're studying medicine
mm,
right now anyway. How would you explain depression from that perspective? Like, how do you understand what is going on? Because obviously, you get depression from trauma.
mm.
Something's happened, it's circumstantial, like, circumstances led you to have depression. Or you can get depression because of chemical imbalance. You can get depression because of something else that's scientific or medical. How have you understood it through medicine?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different theories
Mhm,
around. I had a brief look, and yeah, so it seems, I mean, the technical term for it is multifactorial. There's a lot of different causes,
mhm.
a lot of different things going on. Sometimes there's genetic traits in it, so you just inherit it from your parents.
Oh, right, yeah.
Other times, yeah, it it can happen from trauma, absolutely. One of the theories is kind of it, it's a theory more used to try and explain why drugs help, and it's kind of saying that there are two chemicals that are important. There's serotonin
Mhm.
and there's noradrenaline. Serotonin kind of is in charge of your mood, or I mean, does a load of different things. But one of the things is that it helps with your mood,
Yeah.
and noradrenaline deals more with your motivation.
So, gives it a lift, a
Yeah,
boost.
yeah,
Okay. So both of them boost your mood.
yeah,
Okay.
and your motivation.
And motivation, okay.
And this theory, and they haven't fully proven it. They're not happy with it, but they say that it could be that both of those chemicals are, for whatever reason, been caused to be less produced, or the brain is less receptive towards them. And the idea is, if you take the antidepressants, is that it kind of in some way causes there to be more of these two chemicals. It slightly blocks the receptors, so it stops these chemicals being taken up, so it helps balance your mood, and so those chemicals last longer in your
Mhm.
brain. And the idea is that over time, your brain almost rewires itself, and it kind of updates itself. And so, if you've got more of these chemicals, it's going to become more receptive to it because it wants the signals to be effective.
Mhm.
And if it's not got enough receptors for all the chemicals, then it's not able to be as effective in communicating everything that's going on and the transmissions.
Okay.
Um,
And are there certain things that people can do to boost their serotonin and things
I mean,
from everyday life or?
everyday life, I mean, there's so many different theories and ideas.
Mm.
Um, the NHS recommend therapy.
Mhm.
They recommend, antidepressants if needed.
Mhm.
Often, I mean, let's be honest, the NHS mental health service is stretched to its limit.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
yeah,
Absolutely.
but yeah, I think one of the things that is really helpful is finding someone you can trust to talk to and to help you.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, some of the therapy I've done, it's less. I mean, it's just we talk together, and obviously he's trained, so he's better at doing this than
Mhm.
your average person. But it's just picking things up and going, oh, okay, well, you said this. Well, that links to what you said before, or whatever. And it's just getting an understanding on it. Um,
Does that help you overcome it?
Yeah, I think so because I mean, if you think, well, sometimes all the thoughts and everything, it's like a plate of spaghetti.
Hmm.
You know, if you're trying to, you see, like you might see one end, and then you don't know where that leads to or anything, and so it becomes very jumbled.
Hmm.
Whereas if you go, okay, so I don't know, say one end is a negative thought of, oh, I don't know, maybe I'm useless in this situation. No one wants me here.
Hmm.
And it's almost kind of pulling that out and going, okay, well, maybe that came from this event that happened to you.
You
And
get
that,
to the root.
yeah, so you get to the root and then you get an understanding of how it all impacts each other.
Yeah.
Um,
And how you came to then think, oh, I'm
mm,
useless, I'm this, I'm that.
yeah.
Because I guess once you fixed a lot of the roots of the issues, you can start to untangle what led you there, maybe.
Mm,
Unless it's like we said, genetic or like it's hereditary or
mm,
things like that. But also, I was going to ask you from a Christian
mm.
perspective, you have a lot of the Christian community, and like I just have to say this, I'm not saying all of the Christian community. Generally speaking, even if it's the absolute minority, I don't know the statistics, but the Christian community can look down on depression. They can say, that's the devil attacking you, or, oh, you've just got that because you're possessed, or depression's from the devil and, you need to get rid of it and you shouldn't be on medication. Like I said, I knew a guy who was diagnosed with depression. He was still under his parents' supervision. The parents threw the antidepressants in the bin. They were like, you're a Christian, you shouldn't be suffering from depression. Oh, it's just a spiritual attack. They didn't let their son go on antidepressants. Eventually, thank God, he did mature and went and got help. But the church can look down on things like antidepressants, medication. Of course, prayer is amazing and powerful. God can do anything, okay?
Mm.
But they're like, "Oh, God is going to heal you and prayer is going to heal this, so you don't need medicine." And so that's why a lot of people don't speak up about it because we do tend to look down on people when they have it just as a Christian community sometimes. How do you feel about that? How do you feel that Christians address depression and the subject and how they deal with depression? What have you found?
In my I haven't experienced things like that, but I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, you do hear about things,
you do, yeah.
like horror stories,
Oh my
basically
gosh,
like
yeah.
that. It's irritating. I think, I mean, and this is more society in general as well.
Hmm.
We think of like these mental illnesses like depression and
Hmm.
anxiety as almost not worthy of being a proper illness.
Hmm.
And I mean, this is one of the reasons why I really hope that we do find out how depression happens and what the causes in that, because it is, if you think of it as like a something actually changing physically,
Hmm.
it, for whatever reason, it becomes that much more real.
Hmm.
It's, yeah, so there is that. I mean, it's a lack of understanding, basically, I think. But
And pure
it
ignorance.
is, yeah.
Pure ignorance.
Yeah, I think I mean, if you want to say, oh, you shouldn't take medication for it, well, what about, for an infection? Would you deny someone antibiotics? Would you can name all these different illnesses.
Yeah.
If someone's got Crohn's disease, would you take them off their medication?
I
If
don't know, but
it's,
why I don't know why some Christians look at physical illness as
mm,
legit, mental illness is from the devil. Like, of course, it's not from God. That's for
yeah,
sure. We do know
yeah,
that much. But yeah, what you make such a good point. Why wouldn't you treat that?
mm, yeah, I think
I
it's,
guess therapy is one thing that wouldn't work for physical illness,
no,
but it's sort of an illness.
yeah, yeah, and I think it is. I mean, I don't think it's just Christians who do that either. I think
Yeah, no.
they can be more vocal about it because you can, you invoke the devil and things like that.
Yeah.
I think to say it's always from the devil kind of almost denies that fact that actually the world we live in is full of sin and it
Yeah.
is broken, and
Hmm.
we're not. God never says we're immune to that. Um,
And a lot of, I'd say, new Christians, baby Christians,
mm,
or they've just discovered God or church. they have this impression, and actually the general public, even the non-believers, other faith believers, they think, oh, if I've got depression, I'm just going to be a Christian and then it's all just going to go away. Or they look at Christians and they think, why have you got depression? Like, doesn't your God heal everything all the time? Why have you got depression? Like, you really don't hear about many Christians with depression because they're like, oh, but the Bible talks about all this joy and all this peace and everything should be rosy. And
Mm.
what's your take on it?
I think you can have joy and depression.
Really?
It's really
Explain it. Please
um,
explain it.
because the joy that God talks about in the Bible is this joy of, I mean, it's a supernatural joy. It's um,
How do you get that?
the joy that comes from the knowing the fact that you are saved, and
Like you're going to heaven
yeah,
after you die. Yeah.
yeah, and that, you know, on becoming a Christian, I am adopted into God's family,
Hmm.
and that does bring joy. It doesn't.
Because joy,
It's
when people think of joy, they just imagine us doing a little dance and like
yeah.
opening a bottle of champagne, or doesn't always look like
No,
that, does it?
no.
How would you describe it?
I think it's more a sense of almost. Well, I mean, I think a sense of peace comes from that.
Reassurance.
Yeah, reassurance, and I guess knowing that this isn't it. I'm not going to be kind of stuck like this forever. Um, and yeah, I think it brings hope. I can hope for, you know, Jesus's return.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean that every day's easy. It
No,
doesn't fix anything
no.
in the immediate. Well, I say it doesn't fix anything. It doesn't
In some cases,
in some
yeah.
cases, yeah, but it doesn't kind of just magically kind of turn you healthy. But it does. It helps put things into perspective. Yeah, that idea of kind of this too shall pass. It's not.
That is in the Bible, isn't it? Is
Yeah,
it? Yeah, I
I
think
think
so.
so.
Yeah.
I can't remember where. But yeah, it is. It is something that can be misunderstood. I think, you know, for me to say I have joy but I have depression, it does sound a little bit like they're opposites.
You have hope and
Hmm.
reassurance through God.
Yeah.
And so, what when you get those days when you feel really low, let's say, what are your best strategies as a Christian, from a Christian perspective, at coping? Because I know the Bible is so effective. Like we said, it doesn't make you super happy, but it is so full of reassurance. So, are there scriptures that you hold on to in there?
Yeah. I don't go to the Bible as often as I should. I think
Yeah,
that's what most Christians would say, to be honest. But
especially when you lack motivation and that.
yeah, yeah, and sometimes you just want to avoid God because
Yeah,
yeah, he's not. He's you think he's not doing anything. He definitely is, but
we do this thing where
yeah,
we normally tend to go to God because we associate him to good things.
mm,
So when we have hard times, he's the last person we want to go to
yeah, yeah. Although he's definitely the first person we should go to, but
because he's the
it is.
healer.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. A passage that I found really, really helpful. It's 1 Kings 19,
Yeah.
and it's Elijah, and he's got. So he's just kind of brought fire from heaven. He's done amazing miracles, and he is still being persecuted by the I think it was the queen at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Jezebel.
yes, yes, and yeah, he goes into the wilderness and he goes, you know what, God, I haven't been able, you know, I've done all of these things and it still hasn't changed anything. It would be better if I was dead. And he literally says that. And God goes, God basically sends an angel and gives him food and tells him to go to sleep. And he does that a couple of times. Before telling him, okay, now make this journey to the mountain where you will meet with me. And so it's incredibly kind of understanding and reassuring. He's that there's no condemnation. There's no, oh,
Shame,
well,
guilt.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's none of that. It's just
Or instant healing.
all instant healing, you know. But it's really interesting. He brings Elijah to the mountain where Elijah meets with him in the silence. And only after Elijah has met with God does God then address the problems. And one of the things that Elijah has said was that he's all alone. And after meeting with him, God says, I have prepared someone else for you to mentor. That's Elisha, I think. And yeah, so it's that we need to turn to God first before anything can change. In a way, it's opening ourselves up to God wanting to help. God's not going to help if we shut him out. We have free will, and sometimes we can use that to our detriment.
Hmm.
Um,
We sure do.
yeah,
A great deal of humanity does.
yeah, and if we don't want God to help, he's not going to force himself on us. So we do need to turn to him and be open with him and allow him to change us. And that's not always going to be pleasant
No,
necessarily.
that's why we talk about the reality of the
Yeah.
Christianity. Welcome, guys. I think there are so many hopeful scriptures, and I just want to say that the Bible isn't just a story about everything's good and happy all the time. I think people get that impression. They always go, read the Bible, it's so amazing. Yes, it's amazing. If you read through the Psalms or through the Old Testament, there are a lot of prophets who suffered with depression, um, or who went through depressing times. I think Jonah was one of them, and I forgot my Bible at home today, and I'm not one to memorize scriptures the best, but I think Jonah said God asked him to do something and he didn't want to do it. And after he did it, he was like, just kill me now. Just kill me now. You might as well just take my life now. I don't want to stay alive now. And I think Job, he lost kind of everything, didn't he? He lost everything, family, farm, like wealth, and he still didn't curse God. And God really rewarded him at the end. So there is a reward of some kind, spiritual and afterlife, if you hold on to God. And there are scriptures, like you said with Elijah, where Elijah's like, I've had enough. Take my life, God. This is a burden I can't bear. Take it away. This is too much. Um, so scriptures do address depression. The prophets were depressed, but God always responded with provision. He provided food, comfort, naps, sleep. So we can even take away from that, actually.
Mm.
And we are going to touch on this topic again further in the future. Anxiety, depression. It is something Christians experience as well as non-Christians, obviously. Do you want to share some helplines that might help people? And guys, we're not going to call out the numbers of the helplines for those that are in need of help because of depression or anxiety, but it will be in the captions when this gets posted out on YouTube, on Instagram, Reality of Christianity, and we will be posting telephone numbers and other details on how you can get help. So, any particular helplines that people can go to when they feel really down. Like I know New Kapporet is a Christian prayer line, and CBN have a prayer line as well. I think it's like 9 to 5.
Okay.
Any other ones?
I mean, the Samaritans is the most well known. I I haven't heard anything negative about them.
Mm.
There's Papyrus as well, and I think Calm as well. Yes,
Calm.
yeah, campaign against living miserably.
Oh, amazing. So,
Yeah,
are they all phone lines?
yeah, they're all phone lines. They're not always open 24/7.
Uh huh.
Samaritans is though.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think it's really important to have these helplines
Yeah.
because sometimes you don't want to bother anyone,
No.
and on the helpline
But
they're
they're
all there.
dedicated,
Yeah,
aren't
they're
they?
dedicated.
That they dedicate their time to talk to people.
Mm,
So some of them you can talk to people, other ones you can just ask for prayer. I just want to say you do not have to be a Christian. You don't even have to have any faith whatsoever, or you can be of any faith. I would also suggest BetterHelp,
mm,
which is online. I think it's all online. I'm not quite sure. I found Natasha Hines to be quite helpful on there. She's a Christian therapist, or I
okay.
think she's a therapist, but she does Christian therapy as well. I think that they charge less for people with lower incomes as well. So they do tend to find strategies to kind of accommodate everybody, whether you're on a full time income, low income, if you need Christian therapy and non Christian therapy. Um, so I'll direct people to those.
Mm.
So thank you so much, Josh.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we are trying to inspire people to hold on to God, talking about the realities of Christianity, the good times and the not so good times, and how to hold on to God through those times. A really good scripture that also comes to mind is Paul says in the Bible, run the race until the very end so you can receive the crown of life. So don't run the race a quarter of the way, don't run it halfway, run it until the very, very end. Until God has decided that, right, your life is complete now. You'll receive the crown of life, meaning you'll probably go to heaven with God, hopefully, God willing. So that's a really inspiring scripture for people that do feel depressed or low. Prayer is really effective, isn't it?
Mm.
And like you said, friendship and people and pastors and mentors came in really helpful for you,
Yeah, yeah.
and understanding your depression as well, and meds, doctors.
Mm.
God uses it all.
Mm. Yeah, definitely.
Anything you want to say before we finish?
No, I think I would just, encourage people, if you're struggling to reach out, whether that is directly to a GP or whether you want to I talked about it with my girlfriend first. I
Hmm.
wasn't sure. I guess don't isolate yourselves because that only makes things worse.
Yeah. And I think that the scripture that you shared, where Jesus' disciples were like, where else are
Mm.
we going to go? You are the one who holds the words to eternal life. Where
Yeah,
else are we going to turn?
yeah.
But to you, eternal life, not just life here, but the one after.
Mm.
That's so amazing, isn't it? There's so much hope that you can hold on to, even if it's not in this life,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah. So thank you, Josh, for today.
Thank you for having me.
Such an inspiration. Um, it's been such a hard and great topic to touch upon. We hope that it does help a lot of people, Christians, non-Christian, other faiths, whoever, whatever. Do guys look up the descriptions online, the telephone numbers. I encourage you to go to them. Get therapy if you have to. Maybe reach for the Bible if you think to do that one day. And we will return to this topic in further detail a bit later down the line. So for now, guys, thank you for being our audience. Thank you for my guests on the podcast today. It's been amazing. It's been phenomenal. We are here to glorify God and help people. So thank you again. Join us next time. See you guys.